I have these really good friends, Garrett and Nicole McNamara, and they are these legendary big wave surfers. Garrett broke the world record for the biggest wave ever surfed in the world at Nazaré, Portugal, and they have a show on HBO. It's an amazing show called The 100-Foot Wave, and they were at lunch in Vegas with a buddy, and their friend brought another friend who's a longtime kind of like aerospace employee or whatever. And he was at lunch and he looked a little sort of traumatized, and they get into it and they find out that this guy had been an employee at Area 51. And I think they're joking about, because they just know the lore. They're like, so like, have you seen any aliens? And he kind of goes white in the face. Apparently he had been taken down again, also underground. So similar to the Oscar Wolf story, and seen a reptilian being in custody, like somehow like chained up, and that the thing seemed to speak to him like telepathically, and he freaked out and ran, and has been, I think, somewhat traumatized ever since.
On like medical leave?
I think on medical leave. Yeah. I don't know the exact I don't want to get it wrong, but yeah. And I know them very well. They're like really close friends,
sure,
beyond trustworthy. And they didn't tell this to me to like tell this story. Like, they don't need the fame or notoriety.
Sure,
like I mean, he's a legend, and she's amazing. I love her. And so there's no ulterior motive there.
Yeah, that's just relaying the information that this person said.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
It is crazy.
There also, Danny told me about this other story about somebody who is, I guess, maybe translating calls. I'm going to butcher this, but he was or transcribing calls or something, and overheard them say at S4 that the Mantis people didn't want any humans in the room.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And I was like, oh, that's two weird things there. You said the Mantis people, and then you said they don't like us.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Like we're inferior. They don't want us.
Well, the other interesting possible spin on this is like, you have Harold Malmgren, who was, presidential advisor to JFK, LBJ, Nixon, and Ford, saying that he was briefed on other world technologies by Richard Bissell, who we know is the deputy director of the CIA and founded Area 51. And so that's like the founding of Area 51 is dealing with other world technologies. This is early on. This was like early 60s. So, and like, I think the Area 51 was founded in the 50s. So like, my guess is Occam's razor that like Otherworld Technologies was like part of the founding of Area 51. It wasn't like 8 years in, now we have Otherworld Technology. We're incorporating it at Area 51.
They needed it to be hidden.
And before Area 51 was formed to do U-2 spy plane testing, it was an atomic test range. And we know where UFOs show up, right? So like the Nevada test site is, I think, not just serendipitously, I think very deliberately created around this sort of stuff. And then you have to ask the ontological question, like, is there a maybe space program or, aerospace program where the aliens are working with the humans side by side? And I had an interesting conversation with Hal Puthoff, where he sort of hinted at something like that being possible, which is always his sort of thing, where like, it's always, he'll always be like,
confirm or deny.
Look at this open source paper. Take a look. Tell me what you think,
Yeah.
So
interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So, again, I don't know, but like the story, the
also
only
Richard
part of this,
Doty and the whole Phil Schneider and like,
totally.
I mean, there's like all the stories about them, working alongside, for these horrible things.
Totally.
Yeah.
And the only part of the story that the McNamara's told, which again, I fully believe their relaying of this, but that like doesn't sit well with me, is the guy seeing the alien chained up. Like, presumably, I mean, maybe that some of these are like avatar biological drones, and it actually is easy to sort of, chain them up or, whatever. But to the extent that we've had any real alien interaction, maybe you'd partner with them. You wouldn't like, take them into custody or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, unless, maybe that one misbehaved or they had some type of strife or, you know what I mean? Like there are those stories.
Sure.
Where, you were not allowed, was it Phil Schneider said you weren't allowed to bring a gun into like the certain level, whatever it was. There was like these, I don't know how many levels underground, but like in the lower ones, the ETs there did not want you to bring a gun in there.
Wow.
And then one of like the lower level guys, he was there and he had a gun on him because he forgot or whatever, and like stressed them out, and like it stressed him out, but he saw them like sort of like get stressed out, so he pulled his gun out, and it was like they killed a bunch of people, and it was like
Jesus.
this whole thing. But like, you know, it, yeah, we say this just because it makes for interesting conversation, but at no point am I sold on any of these things. But much like you said near the beginning of the interview or the podcast was, you know, let's low conviction, let's bring all this on the ground floor, keep it there, you know what I mean, and play around with it and see if we can find connections, but definitely don't take it to the bank.
Totally. I think to make progress in this field, you have to presume a baseline of like the thing probably exists, and like, you know, make a few baseline assumptions and then speculate. And you have to be fully aware that like the whole thing might collapse at a certain point because you might have taken like the wrong branch. But I think to make progress, you have to sort of suspend certain disbelief. You have to say, okay, past a certain amount of probability, let's know that it's still probabilistic, but let's take it as a prior in our further speculation.
Yeah. Occam's razor doesn't really apply to the UFO landscape.
No.
When you're looking for, you know, new information.
Absolutely. But I think the fringe is where the sort of future comes from.
Yeah.
And so it's systematically sort of, you know, panning for gold, and the weird shit is like, that's where the good stuff comes.
Yeah. And I found out, like, even hanging with you like yesterday and today, that your drive and your passion for 0 point energy, gravitational, more on the gravitational stuff, the manipulation of gravity and what the effects of that are on time and whatever. Like, that's your interest. And I found it that like my equal interest lies in the stories of these beings.
Yeah.
And I'm just like completely obsessed with them. I have all these books with like these where they meet these beings, and I'm so interested as much as you're interested. And it just made me so happy that we share common interests. That aren't identical, but that are complementary.
Totally.
Which is really cool.
I think it's awesome, man. And like, I think, you have the invisible college, right? You know, it's just actually this Robert Boyle term harkening back to like, you know, 16th century, like the pre-Enlightenment. And I take it now in the modern context, in the like the Jacques Vallée context, almost to mean like people who are like called to this stuff from some, I don't know, primordial, like, you know, this just feels like it's part of the, you know, my life's mission or whatever. And I love the fact that everybody's pulled to different aspects to it. You're pulled to getting to know the culture of, you know, the beings themselves. You have, you know, UAP Gerb, who's like as good as anybody I know when it comes to tracking legacy program activities. And then, I try to sort of sense make on, you know, or, you know, figure out what's going on. But I also have very deep interest in the gravity and time stuff.
Yeah. The theoretics of it. You're just so, I love hearing your brain, you know, when it comes to this stuff, especially when you get a new piece of information. You can see, I hear you sometimes, like when you hear a new piece of information, you might not get this because he maybe edits this out of his own videos, but you go, yeah, yeah. And no one's saying anything. And that's just you making connections in your head. And you're like, yeah, yep. Yeah. And you can like, you're externalizing these like actual connections, these like these neurons that are clicking together in your brain. It's fascinating to see. And it's wonderful.
So funny. I'd probably be doing that the entire time and not even speaking if I didn't have like a podcast, you know, but then you have to like, and the thing I sometimes struggle with is like, you have to like have this canon in your head of like these different events. And sometimes I'm like, I don't even care about the specifics of a single event. I care about how they kind of like corroborate or comport with each other, and like how you can build like a working model. And then sometimes I'm like, I'll do a podcast and I'm like, I got to study up on these cases. And I'm like, the details are like, you know, obviously they're extremely important to get right at a certain point. And then just to make the connections or whatever for me. And then I think there are great, you know, it's like encyclopedias of the actual like stories themselves. And like that has tremendous value too. But yeah, that's funny that you said.
Yeah,
I like that.
I can see you in
Yeah.
real time making amazing connections. It's fun to see.